right, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and honored guests, what would you kill for? Would you kill for your country? If your family was threatened? Would you kill for a slight against your honor? So today we'll talk about the Honor of Thull, a village in northwest Afghanistan in the year 1984, the year I was born. And we'll see what happens when vengeance goes too far, when it looks like the book of Revelations. So I have two caveats and then 3 main points. For the 2 caveats, the first is that this violence that we'll speak of today was not caused by Islam. Although the village of Thull was full of Muslims, it was their culture, not their religion, that caused the violence. And later they hijacked Islam to justify their violence. The second is that I'm not an anthropologist, I'm an Irishman. So every Irishman aims to be a good storyteller, although usually I'm better with a Guinness in hand. Now for the 3 main points, we'll talk about the history of the Thull blood feuding. We'll talk about the escalation of that blood feuding with the introduction of weapons, of guns. And then we'll talk about a blood feud much closer to home. All right, so the village of Thull is located in the Panjshir Valley, the Dir Kohistani district of northwest Pakistan, in the Hindu Kush mountains, rugged mountains. So I've deployed to Afghanistan and fought in similar terrain in the Pesh River Valley, very similar. And as a soldier, I can tell you I've never seen more beautiful or more intimidating terrain. From the ground looking up, it's mind-boggling. The British knew this, and in their empire, they did not try to control this area of Pakistan. They had a hands-off policy in the frontier corps, and they basically did diplomacy and then punitive raids in vengeance if they were attacked. And so this led to cultural and economic isolation for the villagers of Thull. As you see, until the 1950s, this is what all the roads in and out of the village looked like. So they couldn't support motorized vehicles, and so economically and socially, the village of Thull was isolated and then self-sufficient as well. And you'll see how that ties in with their honor. All right, so Thull, the people of Thull are not Pashtun, they're not from the Pashtun ethnicity, they're Kohistani. But they still subscribe to the Pashtun-Wali honor code that's been made famous recently. And so the Pashtun-Wali honor code, it consists of 4 things. It consists of vengeance, hospitality, refuge, and then mercy for enemy. And with no higher authority, there's no police and no government in there, Pashtun-Wali for centuries has made stability for all the tribes in the area. Now let's go back to vengeance, that first part of Pashtun-Wali. Vengeance really came down to slights against Gairat, which they call honor given from God. And really those slights kind of boil down into a couple things, but mostly slights or shame against your women, against your sisters, a man's wife, his mother. And so a slight against that could be a man talking to one of those women, a man shining light on the women from a mirror, I guess that's a unique one, or looking at them unveiled. And so this shame required vengeance. Now we'll talk about the complex social structure of the Thull. So the Thull put guys roughly, all their male counterparts, into 4 areas. You had your family over here, who you would fight with. You had your allies right here, and those are kind of who you farm with and economical trade with. You had your opponents, and then you had your mar dushman, your death enemies. And so what's interesting is everybody, if this were the village of Thull, you wouldn't know where you were on the different scales for this. So I might think for Fred, we're friends, we're allies, but really I'm an opponent, or I might be a death enemy for him, and I wouldn't know it. I might be a mar dushman, and I might not know it until Fred pops out of a bush and starts attacking. Okay, so as you can see, this looks like what an average attack would look like before 1950, I should say, was I'm Hamid, I take my sheep up to the upper pastures, and as I'm leading them up there, 3 men jump out. Before 1950, they didn't have guns. So it would be billy clubs, sticks, spears, and they would begin beating me until I cried for mercy. Whatever slight I had done to their army or to their honor, real or perceived, would be restored, and then I would go back with my cousins and plan the next revenge. So you see, the cycle goes on and escalates. There's only two ways, and they're both cumbersome, for peace resolution. The first is that I would crawl on my hands and knees into Fred's guest house, and I would beg for mercy, and Fred would whip me. So that's option number one. Number two is I would bring everyone from all the villages, and we'd have a giant shura, and all the tribal leaders would resolute the peace, and then Imam would bless the peace. So both are very cumbersome, and for honor, it's a lot easier to grab 3 buddies and jump out of the bush on Fred if I needed to. So, all right, in the 1950s, though, a major escalation occurred. All of the dynamics changed with a stable road going into Thull. So for the first time, you can have motorized vehicles moving back and forth. Their crops, mostly potatoes, they could sell on the market, receive cash. Then as Hamid, I would spend the lion's share of that cash on what's most important to Hamid, which is my survival. So I would buy guns. I'd start with buying pistols, and then rifles, AK-47, automatic rifles, and then machine guns. You saw how it escalated. And so this changed from an attack being a small, it was essentially like hooligan fight, for soccer fans, and it turned into a deathly struggle. And so it changed how they built their houses. They built their houses with farther away from each other, with the stoves and the bathrooms inside, both of which worked poorly. They have smoke and other smells in the house, just so you couldn't be ambushed at night. And then they also started having dogs as pets to protect around, to keep someone from sneaking in at night. So now I'll take you from 1984 Pakistan to 2016 Chicago. In 2016 Chicago, we're on pace to have 700 murders this year. And the most important thing for this, keep it brief, is that the reason that we've had such an escalation in murders is because of successful policing, the capture of the drug, the gang leaders. Those leaders used to instill discipline and order. They no longer do. So now personal slights to ego, otherwise known as honor, lead to bloody violence. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Fred. It's my honor and privilege to evaluate Paddy's number 2 speech in this club. And actually, I'm going to be a little bit tough on him because he is a wonderful speaker. Even though he is a beginner, a Toastmaster, he's certainly a very thoughtful person. He has an analytical mind and he speaks very well. So be ready. The goal of project number 2 is to learn effective way of organizing your speech. The objectives are to select an appropriate outline which would allow a listener to easily follow and understand your speech, to make your message very clear with supporting materials, and use appropriate transitions as well as create a strong opening and conclusion. And I think Patty did really well in all these aspects. I still have several suggestions to him as I go. I'm going to address 3 main parts of this project. First, how the speech was framed, opening and conclusions, how well it was outlined and organized, and how effective the transitions were. So first of all, opening and conclusions. And I think the opening was outstanding. It was so captivating, this question you asked us, what would you kill for? It was really thought-provoking. It drew me in and it held me till the end of the speech. Unfortunately, there was no conclusion. And I think the only reason for it is that you were running out of time. So I would really want to hear it. I would really want to hear how you summarized all your points and just nail this speech to the point the way you started. The outline. Patty used chronological way of organizing his speech, starting with the history of this village, then the change which happened in 1950s, with introducing these evil gifts from the civilization, and then going into Chicago events of 2016. And I think it was very effective. we learned a lot, there was a lot of revelation in this speech. My only suggestion here is to cut it down. You know so much. I'm sure you probably could make several speeches of the content of this speech. So maybe you could concentrate on the settings and how it changed his time, but just a little bit. For example, like talk about geography of the place. Okay, geography stayed in place, it didn't change, but the availability changed. Talk about structure of the village and how important the elderly are. And then probably the third point, talk about this honor, which has revenge as the main point. I very much liked your speech. The next one is get to the point, and I think you will do perfectly.